What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with the injury report for the Lions and Eagles game, man. It is Thursday, so we have Thursday Night Football tonight. I know it's going to be a good one. We got Packers, we got Cardinals. Devontae Adams is not playing, but I know it'll be a good game tonight. Crazy. The Cardinals could be 8-0. That is just nuts to think about. It kind of makes it hurt when you think about our record then. But we also have that show Last Second Dose tonight. We're going to be making our picks for this weekend. We're going to do some fantasy, and we're also going to be taking a look at some hypothetical trades that involve the Detroit Lions. As the trade deadline is getting close. November 2nd, it's the 28th of October, okay? So it's close. It's Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time next week. All right, so we're going to take a look at that as well. But today, in this video, we have the injury report. We got some news. We got to hear from the coordinators for the Lions today. It's always a good day. Love it. They give you so many good notes. A couple things to take note of today. So let's get this started.
We're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome, everybody, to our video. Glad you guys are here. And we got some pretty major updates on both sides. I mean, this was kind of like the first real day of practice for the Lions this week. Yesterday, it wasn't really like practice. It sounded like it was kind of more of a walkthrough. A teaching day is what Dan Campbell called it. But he said on Thursday, we would ramp up. And unfortunately, with this ramp up day, some not so good news on the injury report from the Lions side. Now, on the Eagles side, we have kind of the opposite. We got a lot of good news on the Eagles side of guys returning to practice, big names returning to practice. But one of those guys still remains with no participation. So we'll keep an eye on how that progresses into Friday. But it's Thursday. It's week 8 of the NFL. It's crazy how fast the season is going. But let's start off with this injury report first, and then we'll talk about some of this news because we did get to hear from the coordinators today for the offense and the defense, Aaron Glenn and Anthony Lynn, and they always give us some good notes, plus Penei Sewell, Derek Barnes, guys like that, Alex Anzalone, but we're really focused on the coordinators. Anyway, let's take a look at this injury report. We're going to start off with the Lions again today, and as you can see at the top are the 2 new additions to this list. You hate to have new additions to an injury report. Like, a lot of times, like, oh, we got 2 new additions, that's good. Not when you're talking about injury reports, not good. It's not. And today, the first time we've seen him on an injury report this season, it's Jerry Jacobs. I should say on the participation report. I really don't look at it as a difference. I know it's like injury report and participation report. They're kind of like 2 different things, but I call it injury report, so we're just going to keep rocking with it. Either way, Jerry Jacobs did not participate today. That's not good. However, it was an illness. He was not on here yesterday. It was an illness. He did not participate today. Now, again, you hate to hear that guys are sick, but usually that's better news than an injury. We've seen this a couple of times on both sides for both teams. Most recently with the Lions, I think Jamal Williams had the same thing where he popped up on Thursday with an illness. He returned on Friday, and he was good to go. He played in the game on Sunday. Well, Jerry Jacobs popped up today. We have no notes about anything for this being COVID-related. It's just an illness that he's dealing with, and, you know, it's kind of that time of the year. I feel like it's that time of the year. It starts to get colder. Guys maybe aren't always feeling the best, so he did not participate in practice today with an illness. So I'm just hoping that he comes back tomorrow and he's healthy and he's good to go, because we're going to need this guy on Sunday. Like we need Jerry Jacobs, and he's been taking some steps forward. Aaron Glenn talked about him, about the progression that he's made and how he's been, you know, kind of taking steps forward. But he also did say that a guy like Mark Gilbert is the player that they want to get involved this weekend. That is the plan, is to get him involved this weekend and see what he can do, because he said you don't really know what they can do until you get him out there on the field. So we'll get to that more in a second. Back to the injury report. Jamal Williams with the thigh injury now is back on this list. He had limited participation today. So he did practice, which is good. I think we've seen him with the thigh a few times.
And all that running is good for your buns and thighs, right?
Yeah, buns and ties.
But it's limited, so he did practice. And again, this was the ramp-up day, so I guess it's not a huge surprise that guys are now on this list, because yesterday, if it wasn't really practice, it's kind of hard to, you know, really get a feel of where guys were at yesterday. But limited participation for Jamal Williams. Again, we always got that man, Jermar Jefferson, if we ever need it. So I ain't that worried. But again, it's still limited, so that's good news for Jamal. Continuing, Trey Flowers, back-to-back days of limited participation. Even though it's not in green, I feel like it could be. It's just nice to see him practicing for back-to-back days. And we saw last week against the Rams that Julian got a lot of snaps. Probably played his best game as a whole as a Detroit Lion. Plus, he helped us on run defense as well. We're going to talk about Trey Flowers tonight as a hypothetical trade scenario. Continuing down, TJ Hawkinson with the ankle/knee back-to-back days of limited participation. It's just good news that both these guys practice on Wednesday. even though it was kind of just like a teaching day. But again, that continues today. So good. They're not getting worse. They're still limited. So that is good news. AJ Parker. Well, here's not some good news, all right? You can see it's in red. AJ Parker with no participation with the neck injury. That's not good news. All right, AJ Parker went from limited to no participation today. Now, Dan Campbell told us yesterday that AJ Parker is better than we thought he was. And when he saw the limited participation, even though it wasn't like, you know, a ramped up practice, it was kind of like, oh, dang, wait, he might be able to play this weekend. But now that it's downgraded to no participation, definitely concerns you a little bit for his status of Sunday. We've talked about a couple of options. I think Nickel Roby-Coleman still continues to make the most sense if they need to. You have that roster spot open if they want to sign a guy to that spot. Same thing with Jerry Jacobs, because we are already kind of light at cornerback depth. Plus, Dan did say that he feels like Jerry could help them with some of those slot responsibilities if AJ can't go. Finish it off, of course, with DeAndre Swift and Jason Kabinda. Now, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, that maybe that's why Brock Wright was playing last week, because we didn't have Kabinda. But Anthony Lynn did say that, yeah, Brock Wright did some good things for us. I mean, we talked about we looked at the film yesterday and kind of the messed up run play that got shut down, and it possibly could have been a touchdown, but the timing was a little off between Jamal Williams and Brock Wright when he was pulling as a tight end. But we did see Brock Wright do some big things, and they did utilize him a lot in the run game, and I think that's where he really shined in terms of blocking. But Kabinda could be back this week. He was inactive last week, and then, of course, Swift, he continues to be limited with the groin injury, but he continues to play on it. So, again, I think we're seeing improvement every single game from Swift. I think that's clear. Anthony Lynn said it today, man. When he's in space, he can hit hard. And we've seen now recently, he's been running over some dudes in the secondary. I will hit you with this. Listen, man, they're not getting back up. So either way, I mean, hey, we know what happened. We saw the play yesterday in the film. Either way, that is the Lions side of the injury report. This is really, it feels like kind of the first real day of the injury report, because yesterday was just kind of strange that they didn't really practice. So it was kind of hard to get a feel of where guys were at. A couple quick updates with guys that are on IR. We don't really have any new updates here. Taylor Decker once again did not practice. This is the 6th day straight that he did not practice. This is the 16th day in for Taylor Decker, returning from his injury, where he has this practice window where the Lions either have to decide, okay, do we put him on to the 53-man roster where there is still a roster spot open, or is he going to be out for the season? You know, you have to make that decision soon. We're getting close to this bye week, but Taylor Decker once again did not practice. See where that's at Friday. Maybe we'll get an update on it, but that's what we have there. And it seems like Deshaun Hand and Kevin Strong may be getting close. So if this spot doesn't go to Decker this weekend, which I would really hope it does, but if it doesn't, then maybe it's Deshaun Hand or possibly Kevin Strong. I'm not sure. It could be either of the two. Could take that spot for this weekend, and maybe we get to see Deshaun Hand first game of the season. And it just seemed like we haven't seen Hand in a very long time, but he definitely flashed going back to the training camp, and it was exciting because he was like, man, I just want to stay healthy and prove that I can be a really dominant, you know, just like a dominant player in this league. Well, we may get to see him this weekend, possibly. We'll keep our eyes open for that. I know I'm putting this update in late, and that's because I was already editing the video when I saw this news, and I'm sure I've already said in this video the Lions have 1 roster spot open. Well, the update is now the Lions now have 2 roster spot open, and they have now waived defensive end Eric Banks. All right, now this was a player that we claimed week 3 from the LA Chargers off of waivers, and he was added to our active roster, but he has not suited up for the Lions once. And remember, this was kind of when we were dealing with some injuries at the spot. I remember Romeo Quora went down. He was placed on IR, so I think it was around that time. But we've seen Julian step up. Trey Flowers now back-to-back days of practice. He's been playing, even though it's been, you guys could call it a little bit limited. He's been playing, though, so they have waived this. Now they have 2 open spots on their active roster, which is likely, because of the A.J. Parker injury, that the Lions are going to sign a player to this active roster. And that seems like, if you had to ask me, it's probably going to be Nickel Roby-Coleman. Now, there is the option with a guy like Jalen Elliott. I mean, we talked about the D lineman. Taylor Decker is still on the board. I'm still leaving out hope that this has something to do with Decker, but I'm thinking this is probably for a Nickel Roby-Coleman move to add him to the active roster. And they would still have that 1 spot open, where if a guy wants to come off of IR and is going to play, then they could do it. I mean, they'd still have that spot open, or if they want to make a trade, something like that. Maybe there's a trade on the horizon. You never know. I wouldn't bet on that. I would say it's probably the safer option, which is likely that it's Nickel Roby-Coleman is going to be signed to the active roster. But that's definitely some big news, because having an open roster spot is a big deal. Injury report, while it's still long, definitely looks much better. You can see all the green there, okay? All that Philly green is popping up because there's been a lot of improvement on their side of the injury report, which is great news for them.
That is not correct.
All right, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, the receiver who really hasn't been that involved in the receiving game this year. He has 0 receptions, but he did return to practice in limited fashion today. Now, I don't know how intense their practice was yesterday, and there's a lot of good on here. You can see all the green. So that's good there. Fletcher Cox, who did rest, so this one was kind of expected. Full participation today from the defensive tackle. We all know about Fletcher Cox. Javon Hargrave, this is the big one, though, to me, because he was out yesterday with an injury. He was a new addition to their injury report, and he had no participation. That was a big one. A guy that already has 6 sacks in 7 games, but he returned today in limited fashion. To me, that's huge because for Philly, having both of these guys in the interior, and like Anthony Lynn says, they get that interior push with these two guys. It starts up front for them. When you have both Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, even though the run defense hasn't been stellar, when you look at their pass rush ability, these guys can both be out there on third down, and it usually allows somebody to get a one-on-one, right? Because if you're double teaming Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, someone's going to be clear on the ends. So usually a center and guard can take either Fletcher or Javon, but that leaves the other guy, whether that's Javon or Fletcher, one-on-one with a guard. And that's where issues can occur. That's what happens when you have two extremely talented players in that front four. Anthony Lynn talked about, containing that, and we had to do that last week for Aaron Donald. But having both those players, just that interior push, Goff, that's the first thing you think of when you think of the Eagles defensively. You think of that front four. We know about Slay in the back end. We know about Maddox, who had a pick last week from the slot position. But it really starts with that interior. Him getting back to practice is a big update for them. Anthony Harris also returned. So we talked about yesterday them signing a safety to the practice squad as they were missing kind of their two starters. Well, he returned today, and that's good news as well. Anthony Harris, a guy that we are familiar with as Lions fans from the Minnesota days, one of their top safeties. McPherson, the cornerback, hamstring injury, he did not participate. We haven't really seen him much though on defense, so we'll just kind of keep an eye on that, see if it returns tomorrow. Devontae Smith, another big one. He had a headache, did not practice yesterday, but he returned in full today. Devontae Smith was back. Not limited, but full. All right, so he must be feeling better, which is good. But yeah, we know Devontae is also about top pick in this year's draft. And Aaron Glenn talked about him. He went through his receivers, kind of talked about the speed they have, Rager speed. He said he looks much faster this season. Watkins' ability to take the top off. The guy is averaging 19.3 yards per reception. And then, of course, that guy named Devontae Smith, who is a stud out of Alabama, all right? And he's been picking it up. Jack Anderson, he also had full participation today from limited participation yesterday, the backup offensive lineman, I believe out of Texas Tech, right?
Yeah.
Lane Johnson, he rested yesterday, so of course he's back with full participation. Their starting tackle, and Jason Kelsey, their starting center, also returned in full today, who was resting yesterday as well. Ryan Kerrigan, now he was limited yesterday, but he did not participate today, which is not good. Sweat, they have Barnett at defensive end, but Kerrigan's kind of like that vet defensive end. You look back at his Washington days, this guy was a stud, definitely in his prime. He capped that off with Miles Sanders. This is the big one. Their number one running back, Miles Sanders, who came out, and that first drive for Philly was very good. Miles Sanders was a big part of that. He had some gashing runs. We'll get to this more in the preview, but it looked like that left side of the O-line, which is where they kind of have the more people movers. Your Landon Dickersons from Alabama, who's playing left guard. Not their best pass protector, maybe their worst pass protector, but he also is a people mover in the run game. You pair that with Jason Kelsey, you pair that with their left tackle, who's been playing well this season. An interesting note with the Eagles, I guess this is kind of what happens when your team is not winning games. This is usually the issue. But Philly, like us, and Nick Sirianni has talked about it, they've had issues offensively where they can show spurts of having success, but you've seen their drives kind of fall apart with flags, drops. We've kind of seen that from our offense as well. Some of the turnovers in the red zone, issues that we've had punching it in. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. Obviously, a combined 2 wins between the two teams is not great, but they seem to have some similar issues. They're not the same team, but they have similar issues. Both teams are trying to get right. You got veterans for Philly saying, hey, this is our chance. We're running out of time. They feel like this is a good week to get back. And the Lions are coming back. Their players are saying the same thing. We feel like we got a good shot this week to get in the win column and head into a bye week. So keep an eye on the Eagles injury report into Friday. Tomorrow is the last day. It's the final injury report. But I do have a couple of notes from both of our coordinators today. I want to start with a couple of our player notes. First off, Penny Sewell did say that one thing he's working on, and he said this way back early in the season, is his hands. He's still working on his hands. He said technique is so important in the NFL. He's watching much more film now that he's in the NFL. He says he usually tries to watch 2 games, Wednesday, Thursday, the days that they practice. But he said his hand placement is so important. He said there's one where he got low, he got chopped down, and he had a lot of rush. And we saw yesterday when we looked at film, even some run blocking. His hands get really wide, and he can miss some hits. And that's really what he's working on. He's a young player, so it's expected. The guy is is he the youngest player in the NFL right now? He might be. I know he was when we drafted him. Barnes had this quote saying, look, we got a good chance this week, and we are desperate for a win. So like I said, both sides are kind of in that mindset that, hey, we got a chance to get a win this week and get right. It's for the Lions get into a bye week, and for the Eagles trying to make a push in the NFC East and get their third win on the season. So for both sides, they're kind of looking at it the same way. Now, a couple of notes from Anthony Lynn. He said this: we are working on trying to push the ball down the field more. That's something that they're practicing with. Now, speaking of last week, and this was kind of, something we've talked about a few times. That probably wasn't their game plan against the Rams, because against the Rams, they didn't want the Rams to have the football. So they didn't want to take as many shots, because if you don't complete them, you stop the clock, you get the ball back. The times the Rams had the ball, the worse it was for us. So our game plan was clear. We wanted to have these long drives, and of course we wanted to punch it in, which we didn't. We had many opportunities to punch it in, we didn't. But these long drives, waste clock, and just keep it out of the Rams' hands. And that's the reason why we did the fake punts. That's why we came out with an onside. We just didn't want the Rams to have the ball offensively, which made sense because they scored on their first 3 drives of the game. So it made sense why they were doing what they were doing. So we didn't want to just be throwing it deep left and right. And we executed the game plan. We just got to find a way to capitalize in the red zone. Top 10 in explosive plays heading into that Cincinnati game. And I didn't realize that, but he said we were top 10. Got to find other ways to get these explosive plays. And he did talk about, some of their play sets. We've seen them, some of their play designs that are just having decoys, also having guys kind of block and set up big run after catch. They've had to do a few things like that. And we've seen some explosive plays like that. We haven't really been able to get the shots down the field. And he did talk about, the production hasn't been there for whatever reason on some of those plays. Obviously, the timing's been off on a few of them. So, that's something that he's working on, and they're trying to find a way to get these shot plays. But again, I've talked about tempo. I think we could see more tempo, because I felt like it found a rhythm for our offense last week. Seen that team's crowding the line. And he's like, that's where you want to be able to hit those shots plays. We got to find, the right time. He said, it's on me. I got to figure out the right time to take those calculated shots. We have to find a way to be successful on those. Really just make the defense pay for it when they're going to crowd the line of scrimmage. And we've seen that. Sometimes you get a safety sliding down and start getting these 8 guys in the box. And then it's like, okay, if we could just take the top off. But there's other ways to do it too. We saw it on the big screen of Swift. There's other ways to do it. To talk a little bit about Khalifa Raymond, who last week had 115 yards, 6 receptions. He said, look, Khalifa, we saw his back in camp, and you could see it. When you were there, this guy was he just got open. I mean, he just got open in training camp. And he said this, look, going back to training camp, seeing Khalifa, I didn't know a lot about him, but he's just a savvy route runner. He finds a way to get separation. It's like, he's a pretty good player. And he's someone that's probably going to shadow our best guys. You have to have the certain player do it, like when Jalen was shadowing, Hawkinson, sometimes Swift. Slate could be a little bit like that. I mean, he doesn't have the same build as Jalen, but he'll probably be, if anything, following around Khalifa Raymond in this next game. So it'll be up to other guys. And he said, Khalifa is doing his thing. We still are waiting for other guys to step up. And we know we need some other receivers to step up, because they are going to start focusing on him. The focus has been Hawk and Swift. And probably for cornerback-wise this week, I would expect Slay to be looking at Khalifa Raymond a lot this weekend. So it's going to be up to those other guys to take advantage, whether that's St. Brown, Kadero Hodge, Geronimo Allison, whoever that's going to be, Tom Kennedy. He's been getting some reps there. Communication seems to be somewhat of an issue on the road for some reason. Not at home, but just on the road. And he said, why do you think that is? He's like, hey, you guys trying to get me fine. I don't know what it is, But yeah, I mean, that communication was tough because it did burn us a timeout before the half. And he's like, I couldn't get my call through to Goff. You got to remember, he's up, right? He's up there in the box. So he's not on the sideline being able to yell to him. He's up on the box. And Campbell said, maybe I'll have to write something big on a big board just so we can get that communication across. That way things like that don't happen, because that was a tough timeout to lose that Goff couldn't hear. So we had to burn a timeout, which made it so, yeah, you couldn't really be as aggressive before the half. You kind of had to be like, all right, if it's not there right away, throw it away, because we don't want to get a sack, because we don't have any timeouts to stop the clock with. So you couldn't be as aggressive to complete a pass in bounds. Really, everything had to be in the end zone. What I love about Aaron Glenn is he always comes out with positivity. I love the positivity. I like to feed off the positive energy. I love the people that give off positive vibes. I love that. And that's what Aaron Glenn did. He gave off that, and he always does. And he was like, I'm not happy with the loss, but I tried to look at some of the positive things, take it away, and he's like, okay, first off, our run defense. We allowed them the lowest, rushing this season, and I didn't notice that. I didn't know that. I know our run defense really started to get much better in that second half. They allowed 47 rushing yards, 2.5 yards per carry. That's on 19 attempts. Yeah, that'll work. Think of the run game. He talked about how important running lanes were going to be this game. Everybody's different. How they do things schematically, things are going to be different, but we've played Lamar. We've played Justin Fields. Heck, even Joe Burrow, he threw that mix. There was another guy. I'm not remembering who that was. Maybe it was Trey Lance. I don't remember who it was. But he said run lane discipline is going to be extremely important. Now, we did a pretty good job containing Lamar Jackson. So Not the same scheme, of course. It'll be a little different this week, but we know Jalen Hurts. The guy's already got 360 rushing yards, well over 5 yards a carry. So, yeah, he's been a very legitimate threat. Maybe more of a threat than their running backs have been rushing the football up to this point, if we're being honest. Especially if there's no Miles Sanders, because then you're looking at Kenneth Gainwell, you're looking at Boston Scott, you're possibly looking at Jordan Howard. Like, he's been a very big threat with the ball in his hands rushing. I'd say it's different scheming for a young quarterback versus a vet quarterback, because a guy like Stafford, he's seen everything. And, you know, sometimes you can get things that work against him, but except for a young quarterback, they haven't seen everything yet. So hopefully that means that we get some big plays and we can maybe get a couple picks this weekend. You know, something good. Maybe like a multiple turnover game. I know we had like 1 pick here and there against some of these younger guys, which is great. Maybe like 2 picks. Maybe like a pick and a fumble. You know, that would be nice. Something that we talked about with Dan Campbell when he came in here is that everybody is coached differently. You know, we talked about this with Aubrey Pleasant. Everybody's got coached differently. Everybody responds to things differently. And he said, going back to my time with New Orleans, you know, with Lattimore, he had to be in the doghouse. Otherwise, he wouldn't listen. You know, I had to get at him. Otherwise, he just would not listen. And difference is Marcus Williams, the safety, we know about Marcus from the offseason. You had to love him up. Jokingly, what he loves about the young guys is that you can mold them. He feels like, you know, Jerry Jacobs. You can see him improving every single week. So apparently he passed the test in their mind against the Rams. You see the molding of Julian and what he's becoming. And he said you can also kind of say whatever you want to say to him because they're so young that they're going to listen to whatever you say. Julian and for Jerry Jacobs, you know, both of those guys, you get the best out of them by getting on them in practice. Plan is to see some Mark Gilbert this weekend. So Mark Gilbert debut, he said we're probably going to see him a lot more on special teams, but maybe a few things. We'll try to do a few things with him defensively. So look forward to it. Mark Gilbert debut seems to be very likely this weekend. I'm excited. I hope we see him a little bit defensively, but you know, it'd be nice if we were like blowing them out and it was like, just put Mark Gilbert out there. We're beating them by 20. That would be exciting. I can't say I think that'll happen, but I hope it does. You know, that would be it'd be a real nice way to have a game go. Just blow them out. Notes from today for the injury report and the news. And again, tomorrow's the final injury report. We'll be back that we're going to be live tonight for Last Second Dose on this channel. So make sure you tune in. We're going to be here with Rab. We're going to go through trade hypotheticals, talk about this game a little bit, get some thoughts from the chat, from you guys. Anyways, see you guys tonight. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.